First, let's start with this case. I, 24F, divorced my ex-husband Derek, 26M, about 10 months ago. Despite the divorce, I've tried to remain civil since we work at the same place and live in a small town. Throughout this time, Derek has insisted that I'm his soulmate and that he would do the work to win me back. About 5 months ago, I reconnected with my estranged brother Luke, 27M, and introduced him to Derek, thinking they'd get along. They did, and quickly became best friends. Shortly after, Luke met a girl, Gertrude, 18F, and they started dating. Gertrude has told us many dramatic stories, some of which I find hard to believe, but I do know that she's a recovering addict and has severe kidney failure. Luke recently hit a tough bout of depression and withdrew from everyone, including Gertrude. Frustrated, Gertrude started texting and FaceTiming Derek. Derek told me about this, claiming their relationship was purely platonic and brotherly sisterly. However, things quickly escalated, and Derek began dating Gertrude, without her officially ending things with my brother. Derek then texted me to say he was giving up on the idea of us reconciling because he had found his soulmate in Gertrude. I accepted this and wished them well, though I felt it was messy. Last night, I received a Snapchat notification from Gertrude. When I opened it, it was a suggestive photo of her wearing a revealing top with Derek's thumb in her mouth, taken at his house. I was instantly furious and confused about why she would send me that. I texted Derek, assuming he didn't know about the photo, but he admitted he did. He explained that Gertrude sent it to all her Snapchat contacts, not just me, and claimed they didn't think I'd react poorly. I argued that it was inappropriate for her to send me that, regardless of her intentions, and that it felt like a deliberate attempt to taunt me. I also said that even if it wasn't targeted, it was still a cry for attention. Derek denied this and defended Gertrude, saying I was overreacting. I decided to block Gertrude on all platforms and told Derek she was no longer welcome at any events I host. I also said I'd handle any unresolved matters with Derek directly and not involve her. Now Derek and Gertrude are upset, calling me jealous and accusing me of overreacting. They also revealed that Gertrude has already moved in with Derek after just 2 weeks of dating, leaving her halfway housing to live with him. From my perspective, Gertrude seems like an attention seeker who is being catty and disrespectful. However, I can't help but wonder if my reaction stems from lingering feelings for Derek, or if I'm justified in feeling this way. Am I wrong for blocking Gertrude and setting boundaries, or am I overreacting due to unresolved emotions about my ex-husband? Let's start judging. Girl, block both of them. No matter what happens with her illness or pregnancy, she is going to implode like Nagasaki all over his life. He is not the first man to be made a fool of by a young girl, and he won't be the last. Block both of them and move on. Worry about your future nephew when and if he ever shows up. You're not in the wrong. So 2 dudes in their mid-20s fighting over a sickly, drug-addicted teenager. None here is a good person, and I wouldn't expect anything more from Gertrude. I'd let him know that you find him to be a creep for dating a clearly vulnerable pregnant teenager, and that you hope the worst for him. You're angry about the wrong thing here. Your brother dated and then impregnated a vulnerable, teenage recovering addict who you say is slowly dying. Then your brother got depressed and your ex began an affair with her. Who cares about a stupid Snapchat story that wasn't even aimed directly at you? This poor girl is being taken advantage of at every level by men almost 10 years older than her. She is pregnant and dying, and all you care about is that she is dating your ex, not because of his predatory behavior, but because you feel jealous and have residual feelings for your ex. Everyone sucks. You are an immature, insecure idiot, and both your brother and ex are predators. I mean, I'm not saying that it is your job to help or save this poor girl that clearly needs some help without predatory conditions. But you seem to be trying your best to stay involved in this whole mess of a situation. I would get you remaining involved because of your future niece or nephew, but it seems clear that you don't really care about that and are only interested because of your ex's involvement. You should stop blaming and villainizing a teenager who you watched get taken advantage of in front of you for months. Next up, I, 38F, am 6 months pregnant with my first child. While I don't have a terrible relationship with my in-laws, It's not exactly great either. One thing that drives me crazy about them is how active they are on social media, posting 4 or 5 times daily. This habit has made me very cautious about sharing personal information with them, especially regarding my pregnancy. Initially, I didn't tell anyone, including my husband, about the pregnancy until I passed the 12-week mark. I'm considered high risk, and I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up prematurely. Thankfully, everything has gone smoothly so far. The situation. Over Thanksgiving weekend, both sides of the family were eager to talk about the baby, asking questions about the gender and baby names. My mother has been supportive of our decision not to share these details, but my siblings and in-laws have been relentless. I've explained to them multiple times that I don't know the gender and don't want to know because it doesn't matter to me either way. As for baby names, I told them that we're set on a few options but won't share them because they tend to post everything on social media, which I don't want for my child. We might change our minds once the baby is born. Despite explaining this calmly, they've continued to accuse me of pushing them out and ruining their excitement. My husband is 100% on the same page as me and supports our decisions. The questions and unsolicited suggestions wouldn't stop, even after I politely asked them multiple times. Finally, I got fed up and jokingly said, "If you don't stop hounding me, I'll name the baby Rudolph." My mother-in-law was visibly upset and responded, "Why can't you ever do anything normal? This is the fun part, and you're ruining it for all of us." While I felt bad for hurting her feelings, my frustration stemmed from their inability to respect our boundaries. I don't trust them to keep things private because everything I share ends up on social media, which isn't what I want for my child. At this point, my husband stepped in and firmly told his family to back off. He added that if they wanted to be involved, they should make an effort to support me rather than badgering me and constantly offering unsolicited advice. Unfortunately, this escalated into a blowout argument, with decades-old grievances being dredged up. We decided to leave. Of course, his sister then posted about the entire ordeal on Instagram, essentially proving my point about their lack of boundaries. After leaving, I turned my phone off because I've been bombarded with calls and messages, with some family members now calling me the witch that made Mom cry. While I understand that my comment about naming the baby Rudolph upset my mother-in-law, I feel that her and the rest of the family's behavior, especially the constant badgering and posting everything online, is the root cause of the tension. My husband is fully supportive and also frustrated with how his family has handled things. Am I wrong for standing firm on our boundaries and making that joke about naming the baby Rudolph, even though it upset my mother-in-law? Let's start judging. Why can't you ever do anything normal? This is the fun part, and you're ruining it for all of us. Yeah, this woman hates you, lol. You're not in the wrong. It's your pregnancy, and you're free to set any boundaries you want about it and the baby. You're not in the wrong. You're setting reasonable boundaries, and their reaction proves exactly why those boundaries are necessary. Sharing your baby's gender or name is your choice, not theirs. And your in-laws' inability to respect that validates your concerns. The Rudolph comment might have been snippy, but honestly, they pushed you to that point by ignoring your polite requests to stop. Your husband backing you up is a solid sign that you're handling this as a team. At the end of the day, you're the parent, and it's your decision how much information you share. I heard a totally believable urban myth that happened to a friend, of course. This lady went into labor, and her sister took it upon herself to splash the news all over social media. Sister's name is in labor. Can't wait to meet my new nibbling. Not long now, that sort of stuff. Tragically, the baby was stillborn. This lady, instead of coming home with her baby, came home to a load of congratulations messages when her baby had died. Her sister was nowhere to be seen, while this lady, at the worst point in her life, was left to explain what had happened. The moral of the story is, do not share other people's news on social media, and don't share your news with someone who wouldn't think twice about sharing it before you. You're not in the wrong. You're completely in the right, and who gives a luck about their fun? Next up, my husband is an amazing person, and everything about him makes me incredibly happy, except for his mother and brother. They have always treated him poorly and unfairly, and it has always deeply upset me. My husband is a hard-working man, and together, we've built a wonderful life for ourselves. We bought a house, have great jobs, and are doing well. On the other hand, his brother, who is 30 years old, still lives with their mother and shows no desire to build a life for himself. Lately, I've noticed how much they take advantage of us, and it has gone from small things to bigger issues that I can no longer tolerate. Here are a couple of examples. For my birthday, which is close to his brother's birthday, just 2 days apart, we decided to celebrate by attending a college football game in Alabama. We informed his brother that we would cover the cost of tickets, parking, and gas as part of his gift. However, during the trip, we ended up paying for nearly everything, including breakfast, lunch, and beers at the game, with the understanding that he would pay us back for these extras. Instead, when we bought him a beer, he didn't even mention reimbursing us. Later, he went to the concession stand and grabbed 2 beers. I thought he was getting one for my husband as a way of returning the favor, but when my husband asked if one was for him, his brother flatly said no and just sat down. This lack of self-awareness really upset me. He never reimbursed us for any of the extra expenses, or even acknowledged that we had spent a significant amount of money, including the $1,300 for the tickets. It felt as though he believed we owed it to him. Another instance occurred during Thanksgiving. I decided to host it at our house and told them I'd handle all the cooking. They only needed to bring alcohol. Instead, they went through a drive-thru right before coming over, even though I had spent hours preparing a full meal for everyone. It wasn't as though my cooking was bad. They've enjoyed it in the past. I found it incredibly inconsiderate, especially since I spent so much time and money on the meal. On top of that, they didn't even bring the alcohol they were supposed to, leaving us to provide it for them. While I understand that his mother struggles financially, his brother has a job and can fully support himself if he chooses to, as he has little to no bills. These examples are just a fraction of what I've dealt with over the past 4 years. Ever since my husband mentioned his salary, because his brother asked, it feels like they've ramped up taking advantage of us. While we are financially well off, that doesn't mean we should be expected to cover everything without so much as a thank you. At this point, I have no desire to spend time with them anymore, and have even considered canceling Christmas with them this year. My husband is fully on my side and understands my frustration. Am I wrong for not wanting to be around them anymore? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong at all, but you and your husband need to be on the same page of how to handle before you proceed. Things you need to plan decide. If you usually host Christmas, are you going to do it this year, but with boundaries? Or are you going to not invite them? If the former, agree on those boundaries down to the last detail. Are y'all helping his mother financially, and are you willing to continue? Or will you be looking for ways that benefit her and not him? Or none of the above? I've been through this, and it can be exhausting. And while your husband is with you on this, remember, this is his mother, so it may be tougher, more emotional for him. But the main thing you can do is both of you really talk through all the scenarios that come up or may come up and be on the same page as much as possible. Since it's his mother, I defer to him for the most part when you don't agree, barring anything outrageous. Good luck. This is never fun and hard to stick to your guns sometimes, but if you're together and consistent, you will see the reward from this after they finally figure out you're serious. You're not in the wrong for being taken advantage of in this situation, or for wanting to distance yourself in the relationship. But if you are going to continue having any sort of relationship with these people, you need to talk to them and set ground rules, rather than just passive-aggressively canceling events. You're not in the wrong. You are not idiot for not wanting to be around them, but you are for letting them take advantage of you. Game, you told him what you would pay for. He clearly could buy himself his own beer. You did not need to pay for his breakfast, lunch, or anything else at said game. Did you tell him he was to pay you back? Did you ask? No is a complete sentence. They can ask and you can say no. Decide on your boundaries. Set them and stick with them. Like I tell my husband re his mother, you cannot change people, but you can change how you react to said people. Next up, I work in a job where at certain times I don't have access to my phone or communication due to being in remote locations. These times are scheduled well in advance and typically take up my entire day. During these periods, I have to adhere to strict safety regulations, which further limit my ability to stay in touch. When my wife was pregnant, I planned to take time off from work closer to her due date. Unfortunately, she went into labor about a month earlier than expected, and I was out on an inspection with no signal. I only found out about her going into labor when I regained service. By the time I got to the hospital, she had already given birth. That was about a year and a half ago, and since then I've been a very involved father. The issue is that every time we have an argument, no matter how small, she brings up that I wasn't there for the birth. It happens in all kinds of disagreements, from serious discussions to minor debates, like choosing where to order takeout. Today, we argued about her wanting to change our daycare arrangements. She wants to move to a daycare closer to our home, but it's significantly more expensive, and we simply can't afford it. I currently handle the drop-offs, and she does the pickups. In the middle of the argument, she once again brought up that I wasn't there for the birth. This time, it pushed me over the edge. I told her she needed to let it go and stop using it as a weapon in every argument we have. I admit I lost my temper and used strong language, which upset her. She called me a jerk and left the room. So, am I wrong for feeling frustrated and asking her to stop bringing this up every time we argue? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong, but I wouldn't have brought it up at that moment, during the heat of an argument. I would wait till after things cooled down and talk to her and say how hurtful it is that she keeps bringing that up and that she knows that you had no control over it. If she keeps trying to use it against you, that'd be a more serious conversation. Edit for clarity. Because apparently some people think I'm gleefully defending the wife here, I wanted to edit to say 1. My comment was before the OP clarified that he had already had this discussion with the wife before and it has continued. And 2. I speak from experience when I say to wait after things have cooled down before speaking. This is why many of y'all can't have functioning relationships, because you immediately jump to hellfire. With that said, especially because of the added info from the OP, I definitely don't blame the OP for snapping, but obviously heating conversations will never resolve anything. As I said in another comment down below early on, the OP doesn't deserve the resentment from the wife, and I agree with many people that she needs therapy. Only the OP and wife can decide what to do from here, and hopefully, for the sake of the kid, can find a resolution that will leave neither with hurt feelings. You should discuss this in depth. I get the impression from your post that you believe that she thinks you were a bad father for not being there, but she probably brings it up all the time because she felt so vulnerable and alone without you. But it was really bad luck how things went down. A month early, on a no-signal day, happening so quickly that she went from noticing the birth had started to having given birth within 8 hours maximum? The average labor for first-time mothers is 13 hours. If you ever have a second baby, be prepared for a very short labor, like risking having the baby at home or in the car kind of short. Unless there is something you are not telling us. Info. Was there any sign of labor before you left for work that day? Because if there was, that would be a very different story.